Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Sherri Douville. Sherri is the Chief Executive Officer of Medigram. Welcome to the podcast, Sherri.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, Jono.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to chatting with you, and it's been great already chatting before we clicked record. So I'm I was even just saying I need to really work on sticking to my half an hour timeline, because I can just tell it's going to be so much fun. chatting about your story. So I will do my best, but I should stop talking about that so we can jump into interesting things about Sherri. Let's start with what you do. So tell us about Medigram and anything else you want to share about what you do, Sherri.
Oh, thank you. I'm CEO, like you said, at Medigram. We are the mobile medicine company, and exist to solve a leading cause of preventable death, which is a delay in information. And that's a fact that's well known through the esteemed Institute for Healthcare Improvement. And the reason why this problem exists is because mobile phones that we use as consumers or even as businesses in a business to business context, they weren't made for a healthcare environment, whether it's a hospital or a physician's office or a clinic. And not only were the devices not made for those environments, but also the applications are traditionally modeled after or ported over from a web app context, which also doesn't work in that environment. And so the way that manifests for physicians is that they're not able to access what they need when they're on the go, which is all the time. They're never sitting at a desk, and that's a challenge in terms of patient care, because then they're not able to get what they need in a timely manner, which is why we still have this, challenge in crisis of a leading cause of preventable death actually being a delay in information. And what we are doing at Medigram is helping to lead, with our ecosystem, the concept of trustworthy, high quality, high integrity medical software as like a movement to support what is referred to in the medical industry as the quadruple aim, and that is the goals of improved care, lower costs, better quality, and better physician and patient experience. And we're really motivated to do this to solve this problem for our family and friends who are on the front lines of medicine. And that's a little bit about what we do.
Wow, what an amazing company and an amazing mission, but also an amazing and succinct explanation. I love that, because I know leaders who are listening should definitely make a note to rewind and listen to how you did that again, because that you just articulated the why behind your company beautifully. So thank you for sharing that. Let's jump into Sherri's story. I want to ask about going back to the start. So I want to ask you about, when you were growing up, what were some of the moments or themes from that season of your life that really shaped you into the person and leader you are today?
Yeah, I feel like the luckiest person in the world, honestly, Jono. So I immigrated here, and I was adopted from South Korea to an American family. And I don't know if you heard in the news, but South Korea's been having tremendous floods from a tsunami, with a lot of challenges with power outages and things. And so many things, make me grateful, to be able to have become a citizen here, right, in the US. And so, like I said, I was adopted by Americans. So I grew up basically in uh, the ultimate situation of diversity, because it's an interracial family. So I also had enormous exposure to health issues at a young age, related to my mom's disability. And so, having that experience of a lot of responsibility around that at a young age against a backdrop of relative privilege, being able to immigrate to the US, has been a really interesting paradox that has really ultimately been foundational, to who I am. And so I think, the way that I was raised, I was in an environment, a very strict environment and household. We had a super strong work ethic, and really high expectations around not just academics. Academics were sort of table stakes, but also around competitive sports and performing there, as well as showing up in a way that's respectful, and having etiquette. And so I think that my most formative experience against that backdrop of living really a paradox of both challenges as well as privilege is really having a front row seat to the gaps in healthcare. And so, like I said, I grew up with a disabled parent, and a lot comes with that, and it really triggered my passion really for improving healthcare, which has to be done now with technology that's trustworthy.
Yeah, wow, what an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to ask you more about a specific moment, that comes to mind, particularly around your passion for that's seeing that gap in medicine and that gap in care. But the first question that popped into my head as you were talking about that is, you know, you talk about the hard working, the incredible work ethic, the strict household. Sometimes people use those kind of words, and they talk about how that broke them. Whereas for you, it sounds like that really shaped you. And so that's my question. How has that had its challenges for you in terms of work life integration, and how have you managed to be so resilient coming with those elements in your in growing up? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like I said, I'm the luckiest person in the world, and it all has to do with context. And so I was very fortunate to early in my career work at Johnson and Johnson, and for over a decade and about a dozen disease states. And I was also went through management, development there. And I always joke about Johnson and Johnson because, very staid, very storied brand, and inarguably the most conservative amongst the most conservative industry in the world. It is, you don't get more conservative, right, than Johnson and Johnson. And the reason why I joke about my tenure there was because I am like an off the charts innovator, is what the way my talent coach characterizes me, because we do these assessments, these talent assessments, because we're super passionate about team composition and designing and identifying the right teams for the right workflows. And so I always joke about how can I be this really off the charts innovator and be tolerated within a system like Johnson and Johnson. So I have to give them a lot of credit, right? And I do give them a lot of credit. And to answer your question, I think having a strict upbringing is what allowed somebody with my kind of innovation drive to be able to conform and be productive in that kind of environment. And so because I've always been attracted to healthcare and worked in healthcare for the majority of my career, you don't get anywhere in healthcare in terms of building trust or earning collaborations and partnerships and things like that without understanding, the regulatory environment and understanding quality, and really being able to be a person that drives that forward, whether you're the person yourself leading it or whether you're the person, selecting the talent to be able to drive that forward. But that's one gap.
Mm,
That's why I talk about trustworthy technology in medicine, is that it has to be underpinned, right, by quality and an understanding of regulatory, that capability. I think I really owe to, to my father, being he was a finance guy at Hewlett Packard for decades, and really, lived his life with a tremendous amount of discipline. And I think that unless I'd had that role model and those kinds of expectations, I never would have understood these concepts of compliance and quality that you have to have.
yeah, that's beautiful. And
Thank you.
so so let me ask you about a story. Can you think of a moment or a story, talking about how it was your upbringing and having a parent with a disability? It really, you saw this gap in healthcare. Are there any stories that stand out for some reason growing up where you saw that gap, or you can just remember particularly being aware in a moment of this is not okay? Why is it like this?
Well, I became aware, and something that's always stuck with me was that my mom was born without a slip disc in her back, which is, it can be very painful manifestation, especially as one gets older. And so I just remember that we had, it seemed like we had four different opinions on a treatment plan from four different doctors, including two that were the same specialty. And I remember thinking to myself, and it took so much time to try to decode why they were all making these different recommendations, and in particular the ones, with the same specialty. And I remember thinking to myself, why can't we get them all in a room together? And now that's what I'm working to do here at Medigram, right? Because it's basically like a virtual room, but one that works when they're mobile, which they don't have access to, because of all the connectivity challenges. And so that's the way that I was, deeply impacted by that experience.
Yeah, I just I always really appreciate hearing stories from childhood that link so directly to the mission of an organization. So that's really just I've just found that really profound, learning that about Medigram, and it's just very moving to hear you talk about it, and exciting as well, because I can see how I really believe that when you're moving with that kind of mission and that kind of vision and history and behind where it comes from, you can do incredible things, and I can't wait to see how you your company, and also I can tell that it's your vision and mission is probably pretty big, like you said, being an innovator. I can't wait to see where that goes. I want to ask you about your dad. You said super disciplined. I can't help but ask this question as well, because I do love these stories. Any examples of that super discipline that really stands out in your mind, that taught you what it is to be disciplined, and that really has carried over into how you lead a company and your work at Johnson and Johnson? And any stories about your dad's discipline that stand out?
Well, I think that he was always very clear about, what he expected, us, in terms of our roles and responsibilities, within the household. We always knew what he was going to think, and we always knew if he was going to be satisfied or dissatisfied based on what we all expected about how we would spend our time, and what kind of chores we would do. And we always earned everything. And so I was, but like I said, I grew up in a situation I consider to be of relative privilege if you look at the whole world, right? And you see how much people are struggling, with floods and being displaced and things like that. But at the same time, it was by no means, I grew up in Silicon Valley, and I was by no means of any stretch anything close to what they would consider spoiled in that particular culture. And so, I mean, I bought my own car when I turned 16. And so it was just the ethos of, you, everything, that you earned, that you got, that you would earn it. You knew you earned it. And that there was just always clear expectations in terms of what priorities were, in terms of getting good grades, schoolwork, spending time, practicing your sport, and doing well there, as well as whatever chores we were signed up for. And then we did have allowance, pretty modest allowance. And then if we, completed the chores, successfully and satisfactorily, we would get the allowance. And if we, decide if it was some sort of chore that was not considered mission critical, like for example, I think I did dusting for a while, and sometimes I would actually negotiate with my dad, like, I'm super busy, I have finals, I have a tournament all weekend, playing soccer. And we would even negotiate, like, hey, if I didn't have time, that I also wouldn't earn the allowance, right? If I didn't do the associated chores. So I appreciated that. It seemed very fair for the most part, and it also seemed very clear. And those are also things that I strive for when I'm working with people, is to be extremely clear and
Yes.
and fair at the same time.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, it reminds me of the book Blue Ocean Strategy, which I really appreciate, that the framework in the book about innovative strategic planning, and there's a great section about how to really take people on the journey, and the key word in that whole thing, which they talk about, is why don't people buy in when you're doing transformation across an organization? is this idea of unfairness. If there's anything that seems unfair to us as people, then we disengage. We you lose trust, etc. And so I just think it's wonderful that from such a young age it was modeled to you how to be super clear and really fair with expectations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm blessed. Yeah.
So there's so many different questions I could ask. Let me let me ask you about, instead of going into sort of your background, and like I said before we started the podcast, I'd love to invite you back for a part two at some point, and we can maybe talk a bit more about your journey before Medigram. So that invitation's there for you. But I want to
Oh,
ask
thank you.
you specifically about how Medigram, like, do you remember, and can you tell us about the first time you had the idea, or the first time you realized, wait a second, this actually might be something that isn't just an idea, but really can work. Like, tell us a bit about the how Medigram came to be.
Well, yeah, Metagram's had quite an evolution, and we're on our third generation platform. And so, to be clear, too, I was hired by the founder, a very talented medical student at the time, who'd taken a leave of absence from Stanford Medicine, because when he went to do his rotation at County, they gave him a pager, and he didn't know what it was. Given his age, coming from Harvard to Stanford, he wasn't expecting to get a pager. What he hired me to do was, with my healthcare background, and work with physicians in hospitals, to do market research, and also some sales with them, and interact with investors. And so when I knew that the business had tremendous potential, was one of the first studies that I did with a roundtable of physicians, exploring how they were dealing with this issue today, and then showing them the demo that we had at the time, and seeing their response. So you have to remember, I worked at Johnson & Johnson for over a decade in a dozen disease states, and I was fortunate to have a lot of success there, and certainly enjoyed the stories of patient lives being transformed, even some patient lives being saved from various therapies that we were you know producing and marketing at Johnson & Johnson. And I mean this with every fiber of my being, which was so interesting and unexpected, was that I had never seen physicians get so excited about something. Because if you know physicians and you work with them very closely, they are, God love them, the most, but the most, amongst the most skeptical people in the world. And skeptical, and I don't know how much you've worked with them, right? And so it's startling when you see them actually get really excited about something. And that was the moment that I really knew that this, I had no idea how challenging it would become, in terms of marrying really IT with physicians, which isn't something that's been done super successfully in the past. But I knew that it just had so much tremendous force in terms of a need, of a huge need, and that was really what I knew.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so where do you see, you're an innovator, um, where do you see the future when it comes to technology and medicine? Where do you see it going? Not just in the short term, but what are the possibilities in 20, 30, 50 years? I love thinking about far off future, so I can't help but ask that question because I'm sure you've thought about it.
Yeah, thank you. So the future I'm working towards, I'm fortunate to be co-chair of an IEEE joint venture, which, if you're familiar with IEEE, they do a lot of the technical standards. They did 802.11, which is how we connect a lot of the time. And so I'm working on a standard for clinical IoT, which is just an advanced form of mobility, clinical meaning for medicine. And the standard subject is trust, identity, privacy, protection, safety, and security. And so, like many people, I dream of a seamless, interoperable, mobile, almost ambient computing environment. And we could, in theory, have that, and it's possible, even with some of the basic technologies we have available to us today. But the challenge is that a lot of those technologies are not truly trustworthy, and there's a lot of fallout of even unintended consequences. Things like a lack of privacy, as well as a lack of actual reliability, and lots of different dimensions. And so, where I see the future of the potential for medical technology is to make it radically more ubiquitous and more mobile, not just mobile in terms of apps, but also in terms of IoT. Though in order to make that work, we have to radically increase the trustworthiness and the quality especially on the software side. And so I do see that happening. I'm actively working to help make that happen. And I think that it will extend beyond healthcare in terms of not necessarily the company Medigram extending beyond healthcare, but I think in terms of the trustworthy technology paradigm is something we have to have anytime you have a mission critical, do or die scenario. Like, I think autonomous vehicles is another good example where I think we'll see a lot of evolution and change in the way that the computing has historically been addressed. And so that's really where I see the future really bifurcating between something like we do for leisure, like, a lot of cybersecurity and national security experts will tell anybody that will listen to, for example, delete TikTok, because TikTok introduces a lot of risk at multiple levels, at the software level, at the firmware level, at the hardware level, and is a challenge from a national security perspective. And so there is, I think, going to be a huge bifurcation between those technologies that introduce tremendous risk, and that are either unregulated or lightly regulated. And then this movement towards a much more quality centric, trustworthy computing paradigm. And that we'll see tremendous growth in that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think my observation, not being in the industry, but just as a consumer, and I think is that in the past, there hasn't ever been the what's the word that like the level of risk from technology 10 years ago, 20 years ago, not being secure. I just don't think it was. I'm trying to think if it was there or not. Probably not, because technology just didn't hold everything together as much as it does now. And as a result, any organization, and every organization that's successful, once again, if I go back to Blue Ocean strategy, that idea of like, where's the blue ocean? And I think in technology, not just in medicine, but across the board, that the blue ocean is in being able to say to consumers, you are completely safe, completely private, your data, like that. If someone can, when organizations can work out how to do that, they'll leave others behind. And anyone who can't do that or can't offer that will, like, I think that's why I think it's so exciting what you're working on, because once you have that platform that solves the pain points, but is also, like you said, really has that incredibly secure and thought out, whereas so much technology has all these gaps in it that can be abused. I think it's going to be a big leap forward, and I think organizations that aren't doing that are going to be left behind.
I completely agree, and I just think that, the one thing I can tell you is I always strive to be super precise, and so there is no such thing as like totally secure, but there is such a thing
Mm.
as high quality and trustworthy, and there's a huge difference between an organization that's designed for and committed to high quality practices, and one that is just kind of got a reckless theme to the way that they develop technology. And then in addition, it's also, what is the value proposition? And in the case of Medigram, we do not sell and will not sell or share the data that physicians, you know, populate about patients. And so that just in and of itself, right, is a totally different level. But then on top of that, having that commitment to quality and also trust. The thing is, if you need a huge challenge with digitizing healthcare has been that you've got to give the doctors a reason to trust you. Like, what basis do they have, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for clarifying that. It's great. It's really important that you clarified that as someone from the industry to say, actually, no, there's no such thing as totally secure. There's just high quality and trustworthy and not. um, so let's as we wrap up, we've got a couple more minutes. I just want to do some Leadership Express questions. So the first one is, what's a book, or there might be a couple, that you have gifted to other people or recommended a lot to other people?
So I have to plug my books. And so a couple of them I
Yeah.
convened 25 and 27 industry leaders. 27 for the first one, called Mobile Medicine, which has been a long-term bestseller on Amazon for medical informatics. And then the other one is Advanced Health Technology, and it just released as the number one new release for medical technology on Amazon as well. And so those two, and then I have a mentor. I have many, many mentors, but my mentor in terms of books is a gentleman named Ed Marks, and he's got a couple books one's called Voices of Innovation, and one is called Healthcare Digital Transformation. And there's lots of other, mostly around dealing with people and human elements that I could also recommend.
Yeah, no, they're great recommendations, and always okay to recommend your own books because you've poured so much of yourself into them. Um, Next, yeah, that's right. They're obviously the ones you're going to be, telling people about the most. So, next question for you: what is, do you have any favorite quotes? Are there any quotes that you tend to use a lot, or have framed up in your office, kind of level of love for the quote?
So one of my co-authors, who's been a close collaborator over several publications, is a gentleman named William Harding, and he's a distinguished technical fellow at a company called Medtronic. But he shared with me a quote yesterday, and it's very timely because it's quick, rapidly became my favorite quote, and that is, great leaders are not the best at everything. They find people who are best at different things and get them all on the same team. And I guess that's from a book by somebody named
Mm.
Gifford Thomas. But like I said, sent to me by my co-author. But I am obsessed with teams. And so I love that quote because, individuals can win races, but teams win championships.
Oh yeah, that's great. I'm going to be looking that up and using that. I love that. That's a wonderful quote. Thank you. What about favorite questions when you're with a group of stakeholders, when you're in a one-on-one with one of your team, when you're with the wider team? Are there any questions that you think, oh yeah, that's probably a bit of a go-to question that Sherri asks?
Well, I copy one of my mentors, a gentleman named Wim Rolance, who got me into the habit of asking, how did I celebrate if you have a win, if you do, something works out well, and you worked really hard at something, that to make sure that you savor it and celebrate it. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. Like, for big things, obviously a nice dinner is nice, but for us, there's even like a sparkling rosé that you can get for $17 at Trader Joe's, and it doesn't take up time, but just making sure that you take a moment, and make a habit of celebration. There's a lot of science behind it about why it's important for morale, for teamwork, for performance. And so definitely, if you ask anyone on my team, they'll probably ask about me asking how they celebrated.
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you celebrate wins? What do you do? I love that. Um, there's also there's a sparkling Chardonnay, a sparkling Pinot Noir here in Australia by Wolf Blast that's like $12, and that's so funny because that's also what my wife Liz and I, it's like our go-to for, if you just want to just feel like you're celebrating something, but really like without actually having to break the bank. So it's funny how these exist across the world in different places. You go to cheap bottle of sparkling to celebrate a win. I love that. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll fit in two more questions, and then
Mum
as we wrap up.
rosé, MUMM. Yeah, sparkling
MUMM.
rosé.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, love it. Okay, good
yeah,
recommendation as
it's
well.
very good. Even wine snobs like it. Yeah.
That's always the test. So here's a question that this could be lighthearted or it could be a serious answer. Any movies or TV shows that are favorites for you or for some reason really impacted you?
Well, so the one that I recommend the most that I absolutely love is I've been a long-term fan of Isaac Asimov, and Apple TV released The Foundation. I don't know if it was last year or I think it was last year, right? But what I love about it is that I don't know. Have you watched it at all? Are you familiar with The Foundation? I
No,
can
no, I'm not.
maybe. So The Foundation is, yeah, science fiction, but it's about this fictional empire that's a constellation of universes. And the thing about this fictional empire is that it's a succession of carbon copy, literally, you know, replica leaders that are replicated in the lab over generations, and it's very authoritarian, and very highly centralized, where there's only a very small population leading, and they're very disconnected from the constellation of universes that fall under what's called the empire. And so the reason why I like the show is because as a leader, you have all these different stakeholders that you need to align with, and that you need to, some of them you're going to please, some of them you're not going to please, right? And in my context, you have investment, population, and then you have the incredibly mind-boggling diverse population of the healthcare workforce sector. And then you have IT, and you've got cybersecurity, and you've got physicians, and you've got all these different people, and these are all different planets. And so the thing I like about the foundation is that it provides really nice and super specific analogies that you can have these discussions with people, particularly on the engineering side when you're dealing with different stakeholders, and it's depolarizing, and it's fun, right? And so finding those ways of talking about some of these very real issues that impact ability to affect great teamwork, is why the foundation is probably my most recommended show at this point.
Yeah, I'm 100% going to check it out. I agree. There's something about it's the same with reading a book or watching something together that can then give you some handles to have really hard conversations, but it makes it really easy because you're not reflecting on yourselves. You're reflecting on something that was on the screen, even though it actually does reflect on on you at some level. And there's something about that that's very disarming, and it really just helps to have hard conversations. So I'll check that out. That's a great recommendation. Last question. So I see I'm already over. I'm at 34 minutes because I'm just enjoying it so much, Sherry. So I'll try to make this the
Oh, thank
last question. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say to them?
So the one piece of advice that I wish I had learned far earlier is the importance of lifting as you climb, and because you need a lot more capacity than what you have that you can bring to the table, and the way to unlock that and work with other people is to make sure that you're instrumental in building them and lifting them up, and then that way two things happen. First, you'll never be lonely, because you're always be interacting with brilliant people, hopefully. And then I'll say you dramatically improve your chances for success at everything. Like the books I said, I worked with 25 and 27 co-authors on them, and I'm sure they would not be bestsellers if it weren't for the quality, of the co-authors, right? And I'm happy that they get something out of it at the same time.
Absolutely. That's so good. Wonderful advice. For those who've really enjoyed today, how can people find you online and follow you, or, find your books?
Oh yeah, so the books are both available on Amazon. For lay people, mobile medicine and advanced health technology, and they're also searchable under my name, Sherri Douville, Sherri, last name Douville, and that's my Twitter handle. I do tweet pretty profusely, my less traditional material that is just like kind of top of mind. I'm also on Medium, which is some of my edgier material, up to date, also lands on Medium. The thing about my books is that they are published by Taylor and Francis, which is like the third highest rated academic publisher after Oxford and Cambridge, and so they're highly edited. Very useful, obviously, for medical people in medical technology. And then it's outside of Amazon. They're also available on Routledge, which is the Taylor and Francis press site. And then for academia, most academic institutions, have contracts with these academic publishers, and so they're available, for academia on the academic sites of Taylor and Francis. But I can be found on Twitter, on Medium, and then on LinkedIn, all found searchable by my name, and I'm very active there.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people checking that out. I just want to thank our listeners for tuning in. What a great episode from Sherri, talking about her upbringing, and just hearing about her mum and her dad, and just how just the impact, the influence they've had on her life, and also on her mission and vision. It has been really special. For our listeners, don't forget, I also have the John O. White Leadership Podcast and the Leadership Question of the Day podcast. They're two other places you can go to continue to invest in your leadership. But I want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to you, Sherri, for being so generous with your time, for sharing wonderful wisdom. And yeah, it's been a real joy to spend time with you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
It was a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, And it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jono White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.